Wait, there's a podcast going on Earth between heaven and hell, and you know all about it, and you aren't going to tell anyone about it? Seems kind of selfish to...
You are just using me for my booze, humoring me. I know what's going on.
No, come on.
No.
A podcast. You're a funny dude.
There's a podcast going on, my friend.
Welcome back to another episode of Spawnography, Hellspawn. I'm one of your hosts, Pierce Slide, and pronouns they, them, here with, as always,
George Marston, pronouns they, them, or she, her. Pierce, how the hell are ya?
Sweaty.
Ooh, I tell you, it's been up in the 90s, in the upper 90s down here in the southeast. 100% humidity, zero breeze.
Yeah, it's rough.
This summer heat fits me to a case of the horribles, I tell you.
Yeah, it's not much better up in the Northeast. It's just hot and sticky and bad, which means that I haven't been in Manhattan all week, but it does take on a certain aroma.
It does.
Of piss and garbage, which, you know.
Yeah, it's part of the charm of the greatest city on earth. And when you come to Athens, it also smells like that in the summer because of the bars. There's just so many bars that if you go downtown, it just constantly smells like old beer.
Well, I would rather old beer than some of the aromas that emanate.
Yeah.
But besides sweaty, I mean, I'm okay, nothing special, nothing really to report. And you just have like a weekend where you I don't know, you bop around, you go out, you do some stuff, but it's like nothing really to write home about because all you did was hang out and just sort of chill and, recharge. That was kind of this weekend.
Oh, I finally got to see my girlfriend Killian as Princess Fiona in Shrek the Musical. Yeah. It was so good. She's incredible. She's an incredible performer. She's a fantastic singer, just wonderful all around. And they had a great cast. It was like in this little community theater, in this like adjacent county, just like a very small town. And a bunch of the people in the production, there's like a couple families, some siblings, some like parents and their kids all in the cast. And it was very much a like, we're putting on a show, having a good time kind of vibe. And I don't know, I kind of loved that. I really appreciated that even more, I think. I feel like in the era of AI generated bullshit, stuff that is maybe like warts and all, but clearly made with love by human hands is so appealing to me and so much more intriguing and interesting and fun and exciting. And also it was really nice to see like a whole little community come together to do something really special and fun about how good it is to be different and how it's okay to be outside the norm in a time when people around here are very not receptive to those ideas.
Yeah, it's a bad time in general. I mean, even in the liberal enclave of New York City, we're going through there's a lot of primaries right now, obviously for mayor. Actually, by the time this comes out, that will be figured out. But
well, congratulations to Andrew Cuomo. Speaking of Hell World, we've got 2 issues. We're still in the summer of Hellspawn. It's actually only the second episode of the summer of Hellspawn. So we're talking about Hellspawn 3 and 4 today. And right off the bat, off the rip, I'm going to go ahead and give our strongest possible content warnings for basically everything. Racism, self-harm, all kinds of anything. These comics are full of slurs. I'll say that up top. Now we'll get into that. It's not a please cancel Brian Bendis for writing this sort of thing. We'll get into it. But I do want to warn you that first off, we're not going to be saying the slurs. We're not going to be sharing them with you. But if you pick this up and read it, it is chock full of some very Tarantinian language.
And it's not the thing that we sometimes see in comics where it gets like a couple of like stars or whatever. No, none.
There's no
That's what
Grolix.
it's
No,
called.
this is uncensored.
Yeah, completely uncensored. Which we can get into it, but I do think that's.
I think there's value and there's not, and
I
it
don't know
is
that there's a ton of value
bec-
here, but I understand why it's happening. So
well, let me say, I think there's value in the intent.
yeah,
I think there is an intent here that has some value. These are not written to be amoral, prurient, shocking comics. These are not South Park
right.
comics or
That's
whatever.
true.
That is, these are not played for like shock value. I mean, there's some shock value, but these are played for what passes for high level maturity and in the world of like superhero comics.
Yeah,
basically.
I'd agree with that. I do think that there's an attempt to not have a message so much as like I want to portray this kind of character, and this is how.
There's a message.
No,
there is a strong message here, and I think that it is actually extremely relevant to our current events.
Yeah, unfortunately,
but it is exactly, and it is couched in some very unshy language and content, and so. If you are not in the mood to hear about more Spawn comics about racism and hate and self-harm and how those things intertwine and how violence is a product of all those things, it's okay to skip this one, but we'd love for you to listen because I personally think there's a valuable conversation to be had here.
I think we usually find some value in all the things we cover, so I'm always much like the beginning of the Summer of Hellspawn, where we came into it maybe a little low, and I think we came out of it a little high. So, anyway, on that.
Well, Pierce, hit me with those credits for Hellspawn number 3.
All right. Todd McFarlane and Image Comics present Hate Me. Story by Brian Michael Bendis, illustrated by Ashley Wood, cover by Ashley Wood, lettering by Richard Starkings, and Comic Crafts Oscar Gongora. And we're going to come right off the bat. We're going to start similarly to the last little arc, where we are privy to a conversation between Fassbender and Hertz, two of the night people.
Yeah, and Hertz is
that we met earlier.
And Hertz is trying to get Fassbender to tell him more about this war between heaven and hell that he was talking about. And Fassbender's being cagey. He's like, you just want my booze. You're just humoring me. As you heard in our little opening spiel, that's basically the conversation here. And finally, Fassbender relents a little bit. And he says, the events that are shaping the war are bigger than I, bigger than the two of us, bigger than anything I can say. And Hertz says, how big? And Fassbender says, how big? And they kind of go back and forth like that until Fassbender just says, big. And as we turn the page, that's the only caption, is Fassbender saying big. And that illustrates, or that ties into the illustration here, which is honestly a pretty killer, very like, I want to say H.R. Giger-ish sort of take on Spawn versus the newly redesigned Violator, who still looks awesome to me. Love that redesign.
It's really cool.
They are just clashing, and that's where we left them in the previous issue. In the previous issue, Spawn had confronted Clown because Clown was driving people to suicide using his dark manipulative powers, and Spawn is trying to get him to stop. And that's why they're fighting.
Yep.
Meanwhile, though, we are going to meet our first very difficult sort of section here.
And we did see, so we're on the set of a TV show. We saw a little bit of this in the first arc as well, where there's kind of this like Jordan Peterson type. I think that's like kind of the best way to modernly describe him.
He's further than that. I would say he is. I mean, this is an out and out white supremacist. Jordan Peterson couches his. He is like a neo-fascist like philosophy. This is for the time period, like a David. Oh God, what's his name?
Dukes.
David Dukes. Thank you. Yeah. Yes. This is a David Dukes-esque provocateur. He's on this talk show with another panelist who is a black woman, and he's basically using metaphor to bait other people into naming his politics. He's talking about vermin and how you would kill vermin if they were in your house. That's something he said in the previous issue.
Right.
Here he's being confronted on it. And she says, the host says, so what you're saying is you'd like to exterminate the blacks, Jews, and gays, the language that she's using here and that she confronted him with previously.
Right.
He says, that's not what I said. This is actually a very important sequence to me. This whole segment with this guy is really important. And it's tough. It's very tough because he uses some difficult language. He uses some slurs at certain points, and other people use slurs to confront him. But what's happening in this is the game that has become, once again, a widespread popular semantic game with fascists, MAGA people, whatever you want to call them, Nazis, white supremacists, where they like to play I'm not touching you. We all know that game, you know, where you put your finger as close to your kid brother's eye as you can. You say, I'm not touching you. They like to do that where they go, I just said this extended metaphor that I confirmed was about exterminating these groups that I don't like. And yet I'm telling you here, I didn't say that.
Right.
When he's confronted by saying, well, you say it in your books, he says, you'll have to read it to find out. And if I did write it, I wouldn't be stupid enough to say it in front of you. It's frustrating. It's arrogant. It's disgusting. But it's exactly what's happening all over our reality right now, which is fascists, Nazis, white supremacists using language that is very clearly meant to be eliminationist, exterminationist, genocidal, and then saying, well, that's not what I said. You're getting it from what I said. And if that's what he says in this comic. He says, if just one person takes what you're saying and reads my book and likes the message, if just one person does, then it was worth all of you hating me. And that's truly the point. That's truly what's happening. I think it's so relevant and it's so shocking and upsetting because it's so relevant. And obviously also because I don't love reading all these slurs. I don't love reading white supremacist speech, even in the name of exposing it to the light of day, as it were. But something I think that's important to note here as we talk about this also is that Brian Bendis, who wrote this comic, who wrote these words and made this point, is a Jewish man.
Yes.
He is married to, he has children who are adopted from outside of the U.S.
Yes, he's got adopted kids that are not white.
He lives in a multicultural family. These are issues that he's presenting because I truly believe these are important to him. He's trying to expose something here. Like I said, this isn't prurient. He didn't write these words and put these words in a comic to be shocking only. He wrote them to show something real.
So I think also that this is, if we are to, I think we kind of said this in our last episode, but if we're to kind of understand this book as the recentering of what Spawn is, right? Spawn for a new millennium, right? Mm-hmm. That doesn't discount the past 8 years of Spawn, but also says, what if we take the superhero element almost out of it and we force you to dive deeper into the darkness that exists within the hearts of men that you see on TV, that Spawn can't punch away, that these ideas, now these ideas are things that we've already seen in the book multiple times. This is not a Spawn Across America book because he's not going across America. This is Spawn seemingly just in New York and there's this TV show. And it is forcing that character who has, for a lot of the time we've known him, been like, where's the problem? I can punch it. Or I can magic it into something. And I think that we even saw it. I actually, this kind of lines up very well with what Holguin does with the Nazi and Nazi issue that we recently covered.
we'll get into that in a minute because there's some interesting parallels with other Spawn stories coming up in the next issue.
But I think that that's very much on purpose, because I think if you had said, I think if you're Todd McFarlane and you're thinking like, okay, if you were 12 years old when you read Spawn #1, that was 9 years ago.
Right.
You are 21 years old and you want to read a comic book that feels more relevant to you. And there's superhero comics, right? So on some level, this one less so, but still Spawn comic, right? That you want to read like the updated, more adult version of the characters that you like. You want to read your like God Loves Man Kills versus 60s X-Men.
Right.
That's not a great one-to-one, but my point being that you theoretically, as you're getting older and you are maybe putting away childish things on some level, you are wanting to get a little bit more out of the comics that you spend your money on. And this is forcing you to sort of face something head on as a reader, that like these kinds of talk shows still exist, obviously. But this exchange,
this kind of rhetoric is far more prevalent now than it was when these comics were written.
It's actually kind of crazy. And actually, we're not too far off from this kind of rhetoric becoming in vogue at the time of publication, right? Because with your Rush Limbaughs, with your
what was this published in 2000, early 2001? So we were just a short time away from
this was October 2000
formation. So we were just a little under a year away from the formation of My Chemical Romance, which had a formative effect on our nation's politics and on the jingoistic rhetoric that became exactly like this. People, it has been a slow creep of people feeling more free to express these ideas. And you kind of hit on what is going to be my thesis for this next issue in particular, but I'll state it now, which is this comic has been billed as Spawn without the breaks. As Spawn as mature as it gets, the mature Spawn, the R-rated, M-rated for adult Spawn. And so they're taking the opportunity to put the teeth into this sort of parable that has been done in a more PG-13 kind of superhero-esque milieu by both Todd McFarlane and Brian Holguin in the mainline Spawn series. And they're taking that and saying, this is what we mean. If you didn't get it before, if you didn't get it because it was a metaphor, if you didn't get it because it was couched, here it is.
Yeah.
You know, I've said it before. I've talked about this a little bit before, but I think it's relevant to consider this. As we were just talking about, the early 2000s were the onset of a redefinition of American masculinity and American freedom as less, let's say, freewheeling. There was a frontier spirit to the American consciousness that was imperialist and expansionist, let's be clear, but that was about you go out and you make your fortune and you find some world and tame it. That has been on a slow drift since this time period to a redefinition of the American consciousness from find a frontier and claim it to this is the frontier.
Yeah.
You have to control it. The frontier has been found. You now must gain power. And so there is a spirit of control that is prevalent in this kind of rhetoric that has become so popular again nowadays, that we see here, where his whole deal, this character's whole deal, is just to control the narrative. And we'll see even again, there's another point in this confrontation between him and the host, where she says to him, where she brings up one of his inner circle church members. This guy would kind of be a Fred Phelps. You know what I mean? Like, if you remember the God hates people, like, that whole thing, this is kind of that, where she says, she brings up a member of his inner circle who went on a shooting spree, a mass killing. Again, so much more prevalent now even than it was back then. This was on the heels of Columbine, maybe the first one in the modern conscience.
Yeah.
But
now we get one like every week, it feels like.
It's so shocking. Again, this comic is incredibly, horrifyingly relevant.
Yeah.
They bring up this member of his church who did this mass shooting, and he kind of denies that he was like, I think he was vaguely associated, but I didn't know him. And she's like, it says he was in your inner circle. Later, after the show, the only thing that he's upset about, he's talking to his agent, and he's like, people go on these shows all the time and they don't get confronted with stuff like this. They get to control the narrative. I said that one thing, I wanted them not to bring up one thing, and they brought it up. How could you let this happen? And that one thing is not his racism or his genocidal beliefs. It's that one of his flock did something bad in his name. Because that's the other trick, is that when the violence happens, they have to say, well, we didn't cause violence. That wasn't us. That had nothing to do with our teachings.
I mean, that
had nothing to do with what we say.
And that's for us, right? That's January 6th, right? That's Charlottesville. Right. That's, it's, I've recommended it on this podcast before, but if any of this stuff feels like something you want to dig into, dear listeners, Spencer Ackerman's Reign of Terror is one of the best books I've ever read on how this slow descent has just happened right before our very eyes, and we sort of not necessarily let it happen. I was 12 years old and when 9/11 happens, but I don't
know what that is.
But that how the America that is about to really become about how the America that is birthed in the new millennium in the 2000s is not just birthed then, right? It's been happening since Reagan, really, but
it's been happening since America.
It is sort of, of course, of course, but that
to your point,
that we get that there's a direct through line from what happens in the 90s and 2000s to Donald Trump. There's no the stuff that's on TV now, the stuff that people are willing to say that they stand for and not be embarrassed about is so much
bizarre.
Different now. It's actually
so
kind of crazy.
Out of reality to me. So I grew up, we've talked about this before. I grew up, I was born in 1983. So I turned 18 on August 30th, 2001. Just for some context. August 30th, 2001. From August 31st to about September 6th, 2001, I spent all of that week trying to be admitted into any of the armed forces that would take me. I tried the Army, the Navy, the Air Force, and the Marines, everything but the Coast Guard. Because I didn't have a future. I wasn't going to college.
Coast Guard might have been the one that let you in.
Maybe. I couldn't get there because I've had a bipolar diagnosis since I was a teenager. Also not a secret. And that was, at the time, immediately disqualifying because we were not at war. Had I waited a week, literally one more week, they would have put a gun in my hands.
Yeah.
And so my entire adult life has been this staircase of this happening before my eyes, and seeing it and knowing it's happening, and everyone around me kind of knowing it's happening, but nobody taking it seriously. And, it's just kind of bizarre to look back at a comic that was written before all of that just nails what's happening. And again, the language is unkind. It's deeply unkind. There are some things this says that I don't think Brian Bendis would write in 2025. I certainly don't think he'd use the language he used here.
I think that would be interesting to chat with him about, and I'd love to have him on the show.
I would definitely talk to him about it.
Really to talk about this book, to talk about Simon Twitch as well, but to talk about this book because I think you're right, it does really tap into something. And again, I was too young to really understand what the politics of the time were. However, the politics of the time are the lead up to the 2000 election. And that was still a pretty fraught time for America, where we had one candidate who was like, I'm pretty sure climate change is real. And we had one who was like, look at that loser.
I'm going to shoot guns at you.
But also to recommend another book kind of about all of this and how we get here and how we are where we are in 2025. And I'm sorry, listeners, I know this is a Spawn podcast, but sometimes it's about other things. And
Well, I mean,
that,
we're talking about what's happening in this Bond comic,
well, and
legitimately.
I actually want, I hope that you take away from this that like good comics create discussion. And it is fascinating that a book that I think we've said from the very beginning was kind of background noise to us actually is a lot deeper and a lot more meaningful and a lot more intentional in so many ways than I think your average person who's aware of the character realizes. And that's a credit to Todd McFarlane for putting together the teams that did this book. That's a credit to the people that have worked on these books over time. And like, yes, in a few weeks we will get back to like, I wonder if fucking, you know,
Yeah, where's Malbolgia? Where's
yeah, you
Angela?
know,
Whatever. Both dead.
but we actually will come to those books now with the context of this one, that this still now becomes part of Spawn's story, that this becomes part of what the DNA of Spawn is. And it may not have been part of the DNA exactly in the same way, but it is always going to lurk in the background, is always going to become part of the character. Because as we've discussed before, this is a book that does kind of exist from start to ending, even though there are stops and starts and changes and things that are normal to superhero comics. At the moment that this is happening, you are meant to, as an older reader, right? This is not for the 12-year-old that's reading Spawn for the first time,
No.
but for the 17 or 18 or 19-year-old who's been reading Spawn for a few years, you're meant to take this with you.
Right. This is meant to teach us something and show us something. And, you know, okay, so it's the Carleen Phillips show that this is happening on. We're not necessarily going in depth in the art of this sequence. Throughout the Carleen Phillips show sequences, it's really just talking heads. It's rendered really very well. The cartooning is great. It's, you know, Ashley Wood does some repeating static panels and stuff, and that's fine.
I was
But
going to say that Ashley Wood's cartooning is actually really close to Greg Capullo.
in a lot of ways here it is.
Yeah.
When you get to just look at line work,
yeah,
you
really
can really
interesting.
see, yes, it is very interesting. And so meanwhile, while this is happening on the Carleen Phillips show, Spawn is still fighting Violator. Violator is sort of telling him, you thought that you could just go around trying to tip the scales of moral balance towards good. Well, guess what? They sent me up here to tip them towards evil. And so for every action, there is an equal and opposite reaction. And that is what is happening here. I am your reaction. They're arguing. He says, I'm going to do the opposite of whatever you do. The fight here is rendered in a really taut way. Like, we're getting a lot of close-ups of Spawn and Clown's face. I do love this one pullback panel we get here on this page where it starts with geez, Al, ow, the first page where we're looking at their conflict.
Mm-hmm.
The panel at the bottom where you see Clown in this like weird skinny little body compared to like Spawn's hulking silhouette with like his unfurled craggy cape. Looks great. What happens next is Spawn opens his cape and the shadows kind of envelop Clown. He pulls him into the darkness and inside forces him to confront the spirits of all the people he's recently harmed. It's kind of similar to what happened with Billy Kincaid in that one, in that arc where, he has all the spirits of the people around him. I like this where Clown is just like, oh, come on, Al. So what? These are all the people whose crappy lives I help expedite? What? Okay, I'll pay. Oh no, go away from me, you scary ghost, before I see the error of my ways. Ridiculous. And I love the cartooning all down that whole like side of the page there, that sequence of panels.
It's great. It's also, we also saw Al. We didn't get to see what happened, but we know that he took Angela like into his cape once as well. I think it's cool that we just kind of get to see Spawn much more in charge of his powers, much more self-assured, much less. Obviously, it's been 100+ issues, but like he feels
his journey towards that control has been a huge part of those.
Yeah, and also too, I kind of like the balance of this book where there's this talk show going on with this like obviously evil man, spouting this bullshit. And like what Spawn can do doesn't take that away. Like
No, it won't. It'll never take it away. And I mean,
there's
go
something
ahead.
there about how Clown is like balancing the scales back towards evil, and like how this evil just exists, and it is. I think that's. I think I was with what's going on in the news right now. I was rereading this today, and I was like, "Fuck, man, I don't want to read these. Like, this just doesn't feel good. It's not like a fun read." Um,
It's not a feel-good comic. No, it's not.
And there is a level of but I do think that like Spawn's a good, and superhero comics in general, I think are really good when your hero's a little bit on the back foot.
Right.
And there is a feeling here of like Spawn might have won, but he's kind of losing.
Well, and we'll learn very quickly that's not just a metaphor necessarily, because what happens the next double page spread, I love Ashley Wood's art here. It is sort of a 6 vertical panels in a row. And the first one is Clown, and you see the hands of his victims tearing into his flesh. They tear off his human form. The Violator comes out. They tear the Violator open until it's just a skeleton.
So cool.
And then they scatter the bones.
Yeah.
And he's just gone. His physical form is gone. But as we see in this next sequence, as Spawn stands in this graveyard where he was fighting him, or next to this fountain, really. It's like a reliquary fountain looking thing. He said, you get Clown's captions saying, "A band-aid on a cancer, Al. You really never learn. I don't know how you did what you just did, but you will learn. It's you against me and mine. You'll see when and where that's up to you. Right? You'll see." And Spawn says, "We'll see." So back to the Carleen Phillips show. The black woman who is the other panelist alongside this racist white man confronts him, and she says, "You're pretty proud of yourself, aren't you?" And he leans in while they're off the air. This is after the commercial break. They're no longer rolling. He's not on mic. He leans over and he says a very racist joke that ends in a slur.
Yeah.
Just to antagonize her. And this is exactly it. This is exactly it. This is exactly the point of the whole thing. They will be on camera and fight so hard to say, "I would never say such a word." And as soon as the cameras are off, he looks this woman in her face and calls her a slur. It's all it takes.
Yeah.
There is a tactic. It's a social media thing, but it's also rhetorical lately. And I don't think this is brand new, but I've been seeing it more and more lately, where people who are avowed white supremacists, their beliefs cannot be dismissed as anything else. We'll say things like, "I'm not a white supremacist. Not at all. I just believe a bunch of white supremacist things."
Right.
Or they'll say, "I'm not a Republican. I'm actually a Democrat. I believe a bunch of Republican talking points."
And
the idea is to shift the Overton window, the so-called gap between what is considered the norm in politics and what is considered the extreme, farther and farther to the right, so that their beliefs seem less and less extreme and more open, to the point where the guy will only say this slur. The word's only going to come out when he's not on camera, or when it's finally a majority of people.
Can you, before we get too far, because we mentioned the Overton window, and I think it's super relevant, can you briefly describe the Overton window for any listener that's not aware of what it is?
Yeah, well, like I said, okay, so it's just a philosophy that there is a gap where the baseline norm of what politics is, or what common thought might be, is one end of the Overton window, and the other end is the far extreme. Okay. And so when someone talks about the Overton window shifting, what they mean is the baseline politics or philosophies what is considered the norm is shifting more towards the politics of one side of the extreme. Sort of like a tolerance window.
Kind of an easy way to think about it is that I would say right around the time that this comic is coming out, gay marriage, like absolutely not a thing that could be possible. However, the Overton window on that specific issue moves towards that becoming more acceptance. Thus, once it's acceptable, it doesn't seem like a radical, unthinkable idea.
Yes, that's the key. Once something is acceptable, it no longer seems radical.
Right.
Even so, like, there will come a point, if things don't drastically change in where we're going,
we're like
there
6 months away.
A point where there will be politicians just saying slurs.
Yeah, it feels like we're like 6 months away.
Maybe. That's a nice estimate. You know what I mean? So that's what we talk about with the Overton window. And that's what's going on there, is this attempt to reframe the conversation from how do we make things more progressive, which is, I think, what the average liberal to leftist American has believed is happening since the Civil Rights Act.
Yeah.
We are getting more progressive. That's just not a question.
We talked about this a little bit when we were more in the depths of the 90s comics about how like the Overton window was shifting in a way that did feel somewhat progressive, not on social issues specifically, not necessarily, kind of coming out of obviously the shift after, obviously during the AIDS crisis, things are going a certain way, but it did feel like we were going through a moment, especially in more popular culture, where you just see like RuPaul becoming famous, right, and like
absolutely. That was absolutely happening in the 90s, was a social shift that allowed us to get to a point in the early to mid 2000s where we were generally on a more progressive in domestic track.
And I would say specifically with social issues, because if we look at how we were on like military and like defense issues, the Overton window's been shifting to the right the entire time.
There is no window anymore. Yeah, there's only the right and the far right.
It's just war.
Yeah. If you are anything but a like war hawk, then you are considered like a pinko commie.
And like to this point, listeners, what I'm talking about here, if you're not, this is probably not great radio, I guess, for a comic book podcast. But at the same time, what I'm talking about is that like Barack Obama legalized gay marriage. Hell yeah. We're like sick. That's awesome, I guess, if you're into that sort of thing. At the same time, and that sort of thing being marriage. I don't care about being gay.
Right. Yeah.
But at the same time, it killed more people with drone strikes than like any other president ever. So like, still just as bad as every Republican president that we get mad about for starting wars, right?
Exactly. So that's a good point, is that the Overton window, that term, doesn't necessarily apply always to a blanket idea. That said, I think the thing that I was saying earlier about, I think the liberal leftist, liberal to leftist paradigm in the US is populated largely by people who think we're just on a progressive trend no matter what. I think real leftists probably are digging in and noticing how bad things are getting very much. Sorry, that came out very like true Scotsman shit or whatever. But I think, you know what I'm saying? The lightly leftist to liberal like population, I don't think they see that there could be a threat to those things. I think they think that it's established.
Right, but then when there is a threat to it, then everybody's like, oh my God, how do we let this happen? Roe v. Wade being the perfect example of this. And it's like, because we've not been getting more progressive, that has not been the story of this country. It has not been, and that is not something that has been valued by Democrats in power, because they have always wanted to placate the right.
Well, they want power
to maintain power. Exactly.
And they'll never, that's the thing, you make a good point. They'll never turn to the left. They always turn to the right to try and consolidate power.
And that's why we'll see.
Because when they turn to the left, they know that it threatens their wealth.
Right.
We're getting into some deep
No, I'm
this
here
is also
for
important.
I'm here for it.
Okay, so I'm going to tie this directly into what we've just been talking about even more. So, okay, this guy here, this David Duke-esque character, this provocateur, Gary Danes, sounds like David Duke, this agent provocateur, racist, white supremacist guy, is kind of emblematic of the right-wing conspiracy nut, as we call them.
Mm-hmm.
I was having this conversation earlier with someone else. The rise of conspiracy thought is driven by that seeking of control, because it tells you you're smarter and you're better and you know something, and that you can fix something directly by exposing a truth that's not known.
Right.
That's all bullshit. It's a tool for grifters, and it's also a tool, though, for actual right-wing politics, and for not even just right-wing, but cross-governmental structures of hierarchical power, because the very idea of the conspiracy theory, of the secret conspiracy to defraud everybody, is a distraction from the actual conspiracies that are happening in the open, that don't have to be hidden,
that are literally not conspiracies. They are just fact that we accept as like, oh, that's the way things work.
They are conspiracies in the sense that they're people conspiring together towards an outcome.
They're not theories.
Not secret. Exactly. They're not theories.
They're conspiracy
facts.
That's
exactly the thing.
Yeah.
That's exactly the thing.
And they also usually are almost so...
Well, it takes the teeth out of the way we understand those structures of power.
Right, because they're seemingly innocuous.
Compared to the idea that there is a government that's hiding aliens from us and that knows the world is flat and is lying.
Yeah. And, it's interesting, too, because I think, to bring it back to like the New York mayoral primary that's going on right now.
Congratulations, Andrew Cuomo.
Well, we're all very excited about Zohran Mamdani, lifelong New Yorker.
I know Bernie recently came out and was like very strongly in support of him.
Yeah. But also we were really excited about AOC. And if you look at her voting record, it's not fucking great, but also she's got to like keep her fucking job, right? On some level. There's things that
double-edged sword.
There's things she's got to do. Bernie Sanders is a millionaire. Like, he's the one who's saying like, I should be taxed more, but he's also 87 years old. Like, It's not like he's going to be paying taxes for much longer. Mamdani is interesting because his policies are pretty fucking reasonable, but he also still has to like walk back stuff. Like, has he said defund the police? He has said that publicly. Does he mean defund the police?
Right.
Well, when he gets asked about it, no, he doesn't. He says absolutely not. That's not what I want. He says I want to create additional support for police officers so that they can go fight serious crime and aren't called to mental health crises. And
which is a way of saying like
pretty good
more social workers. That is I get what he's saying. Now it's interesting. A person I do not know but have a connection to works on his campaign. And,
me too.
Is a friend of a person I trust very strongly. So that's pretty cool.
Somebody I went to high school with. Is part and has done a lot of public policy work. Kind of cool. You know what?
Someone who went to high school with my partner Claire works on his campaign.
There you go.
Not the same person unless you went to high school in Pennsylvania.
Zohran Mamdani, come on to the pod. What do you think about Spawn? You're right. He's right around our age. Zohran Spawn.
I'm just saying, the Spawn demographic is open to you.
I'll reach out. We'll try to get. All right. Yeah, we'll try to get the Spawn community behind.
Yeah. Again, congratulations, Andrew Cuomo.
If that happens, I'm just gonna.
I'm so sorry. You can cut every single one of those.
No, it's okay. It's okay. It's okay.
I'm just being so sarcastically cynical.
Should we get into the next issue?
Yeah, hit me with the credits for Hellspawn number 4.
Great. Todd McFarlane Image Comics present Hate You. Story by Brian Michael Bendis. Pencils in color by Ashley Wood. Interesting. Not illustrated by. You want to know why?
Hmm.
Inks by Bill Sienkiewicz and Ashley Wood.
Whoa. Hell yeah.
Cover by Ashley Wood. Letters by Richard Starkings and Comic Crafts Oscar Gongora. And as soon as I read that credit, I went, yep. Hell yeah.
So now that you say that, I can see the Sienkiewicz in a lot of this.
The other thing too is, and we talked about this with issue 2 versus issue 1, where it was like, all right, hey, a little bit more narrative, a little less experimentation. I think we glossed over it a little bit, but there are a lot of like kind of collage sort of pages. There's some stuff that's very abstract. There's some stuff that I don't think prints super well on glossy paper, but also probably doesn't print very well on non-glossy paper in issue 3.
Yeah, it can be tough.
But when you got a pro like Sienkiewicz, you got a pro like Sienkiewicz, if you know what I mean. So
we open up with the mother of the young woman who died by suicide in the first arc because of Clown's manipulations in a therapy session. And she's very graphically describing how her daughter died in her arms and the horrible things that she witnessed because of it. And, she says, I'm not crying. I just don't seem to be able to conjure an emotional reaction to what's happening, which is that's a very common thing. I'll touch on that in 1 second. And the therapist says, why do you think that is? And she says, I think it's because if I could actually wrap my head around the enormity of the tragedy that's become my life, I think I would just somehow cease to be. Now, there's a thing, I'm just going to say this, not related necessarily to the story, but this triggers on it that I sort of wanted to talk about it just slightly, which is there is this law enforcement line of thought and rhetoric and a court of public opinion line of thought that XYZ people don't act this way. A person whose wife just died
doesn't do this way. Right. Oh, he's got a good life. He wouldn't do that kind of thing.
Right. There's that. And then there's also like, when cops are judging someone, let's say this woman's daughter died. She's not having the emotional reaction they expect. They'll say, no mother whose daughter just died by suicide would have that reaction. She must have murdered her daughter. It's that kind of thing.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? That reaction. And also, exactly as you said, the reaction of no one would ever do that who has a good life, who has these things. And that's kind of what they're piecing through here in this therapy session is they can't make sense of it. We know there's no sense to be made of it because it was kind of supernaturally induced by a literal demon. But that's also kind of the metaphor,
Yeah, no, absolutely. I think what's really the thing I couldn't stop thinking about with this issue was The Sopranos. Now, mostly just because if we're doing a therapy session, it does feel like, especially in
this was, I guess, the height of The Sopranos, and
I mean, at this point, it's a hit, right? It comes out in 1999. People are thinking about The Sopranos. I think it's a good framing device for a story like this. I think that we get to check in on the kind of character that we haven't gotten to check in on in Spawn ever. Right? Like,
right.
Outside of the main characters, we've never just gotten like a random person who's like not interacted with Spawn, but in this case, been affected by Clown, having to like really reckon with their new reality.
Those people are often stepping stones in the story. We're not lingering with them unless it's like Wanda and Terry or something.
There's something I really love in this. Like we get these like 12 panels with the sort of memory of her daughter. Like she's remembering kind of what happened to her daughter. And we see her daughter's sad face, which is like just really beautifully rendered. Her eyes are so big. It's heartbreaking. We get these sort of close up panels. They're very Andrea Sorrentino also. That's what I kept kind of thinking through it.
I could see that with the way it's inked.
Yeah. But I love the next page, the one you were talking about where she's like, what did I think about? Because most of the page is this sort of like black void, and I really feel like that's what this feels like. It feels like these shades of black and gray on a canvas, this emptiness.
to your point earlier, she's saying, I think my daughter had no clear reason to commit suicide. Language we wouldn't use today.
Yeah.
She didn't do drugs. She wasn't molested. She wore her hair in a way that screamed, look at me, like every kid does. She wallowed in introspection like every kid does. She would have outgrown all of it. But see, when she smiled, when I saw her smile, I knew there was a reason I was put on this earth. And I tell you, I just cannot understand why she did it. And that's just very real. Again, there's this trope of XYZ people don't do that. Don't do this. Don't do whatever. You just gotta, if you can divorce yourself from that narrative first in your life, if you can eliminate that narrative from your life, you can understand so much more.
Yeah, absolutely. The next panel, there's a beeper, which is kind of fun.
Yeah, their session is over.
Yeah, and I like these kind of, the harsh light coming in from outside, a brightness kind of after so much darkness as the session ends.
Like she has to come out of herself for a moment.
Yeah,
to leave the space.
I sort of don't. I never really like to subscribe to like color theory and things like this, but this book to this point is basically black and white. I like what they're doing with light here. I think it's really fun.
Yeah. It's very abstract in a way.
Yeah.
Especially the way the black smears kind of cover the back of the page.
Yeah.
But it is very effective as an emotional like tool.
Yeah. I love the next page.
Which this has to be Sienkiewicz, right?
Yep. That arm right there, the scratchy arm with
it is a double page spread of Spawn. Just Spawn.
A cool
Spawn
skull.
Looking awesome.
There's a cool skull.
The skull in the background. But this has to be inked by Sienkiewicz. Just the way the boxes like kind of marked out in a grid almost. It's just many of his hallmarks.
Yeah. Looks a little bit like was it Numbers? What am I thinking of? I'm thinking of the wrong book. I'm going to find out. But
I don't know.
This is a great little double page spread. I love bringing back the little Mac, the old Mac.
The private chat
room thing is really, really fun.
They're talking about Mark of the Beast and the story that they kind of touched on earlier. And he's saying, there was this guy, Mark of the Beast. He summoned the Hellspawn, tried to trap him, offered to take his place, and then the Hellspawn sent him to hell. And the person's like, yeah, some of your information's not really adding up to me. I don't know that you're a reliable source. As we know, they got one thing factually wrong before, which was saying that Mark was in New York when he was in fact in Los Angeles. So
true, but that's fine because they're on the internet, and as we know, people on the internet lie or just don't know shit.
We have Hellspawn and Kalios, who are the two who are like kind of having the main conversation, and then we have Redeemer, who keeps coming in saying the underneath is lacking, and they're saying shut up. And then Angel comes in and says, who let you out of your playpen? She says the underneath is lacking. The underneath is lacking. And Angel just goes, get laid. Which like very real conversation there.
I think so. What is your read on these like little messages? Obviously it's not the characters that they purport to be. Is it
I think it's to give us, go ahead.
I was going to say, is it to sort of like, are people becoming aware of what's going on? And these are like the names that they have for stuff that they're using as sort of like screen names in a chat room to talk about
that's the
these
idea.
Conspiracies.
To me, this is to ground us in where this takes place in Spawn. Just as kind of a little tag of like, this is what's happening.
Next page, very Sienkiewicz again.
Yes.
As far as I'm concerned.
It's Gary Payne, was that his name?
Gary Danes.
Sitting there having a conversation. He's saying, I don't know. I don't get it. Other people come to these shows and they ask that certain subjects not be talked about and the show agrees. And then those subjects are not talked about. I brought this up earlier. I go on a show. I tell you to tell them what? Not to bring up Matt, the mass shooter. What happens? They bring it up. I told you that I don't want to hear his name in the same sentence as mine or the church. And just goes on like that. It's him arguing. And then his kids come in and they say, they kind of try to talk to him and he says, get out.
Yeah.
And I think those are his kids. Maybe they're his assistants. I think those are his kids.
think it doesn't really matter. I think they could be his kids. I think because of their like small eyes and the way that they're drawn, they don't seem to be too much taller than the door
Yeah,
handles.
I think they're little kids, and he's just like, fuck off. And he's just drinking there, staring at his cross, looking at the riot that broke out on his TV appearance, when all of a sudden the cross grows brighter and brighter, and then Spawn's shadow is looming over him from behind it. Great panel. And he says, holy shit, God in heaven. Spawn, there's lightning crashing outside. Spawn grabs this guy, and we're suddenly kind of transported somewhere else. It's very abstract. We don't quite get where we're at yet. There are chains. There's lightning. We see Spawn dragging him away. Spawn says, your turn. And the weird Spawn mouth where he says that.
Yeah, he's like, it's almost like he's like sort of like,
yeah.
Or like wind is almost like tearing him away almost.
Yeah,
it's crazy.
Like his skull is coming out of his mouth.
Yeah.
And he said, so we're transported now to a scene of this man, Gary Danes, being hanged by Klans members.
Now, this does feel like an extension of Spawn's powers from the little Steve Niles arc that we covered a couple episodes ago, where he rips off Jason Wynn's skin. However, that's only Jason Wynn's understanding of what's happened.
Right. It isn't curses him with this.
It isn't real.
He's done this before. He did this. Excuse me. It's the same thing he did to the. It's the same thing he did to the guy who was buying the Nazi memorabilia.
Yeah.
Where he made him experience the concept of being in a concentration camp. This in particular seems to be a direct callback to Spawn Across America, where he turns the guy into a black man who is then attacked by racists. This is a, let's say, more graphic and far more charged language. There's some slurs here.
It's much scarier. And also
it's much scarier.
I think that Spawn has realized that what he did in Spawn Across America was not quite as effective maybe as what he's doing here. That what he did in that issue was maybe a little bit weird and problematic. Although I guess he's a black man who was doing that, so it's complicated.
It's problematic because it was created by white people.
Yeah.
We can talk. The problematic in universe doesn't matter.
Yeah, that's fair. That's fair.
Here it's a little different. The way it's rendered is that it's still Gary Danes on the horse. He's not been turned into a black man,
but he is
experiencing what it would be like if he was a black person being killed by white supremacists, and he's begging for his life, and they just watch him die. And as he dies, he wakes up, and he's being beaten by homophobes who are shouting slurs at him and beating him with glass bottles. He's murdered in the street. He then wakes up, and he is inside a casket that is being burned by Nazis. This seems to be a concentration camp.
Yeah, I gotta say also the grid that we get kind of on the side too felt very beginning of Demon Bear Saga.
I
think Ashley Wood's probably just doing that as a little like, well, I get to work with Bill Sienkiewicz, so
he's adding some touches.
Gonna throw a little in there.
So he's incinerated, and then he wakes up and he's being shot by the guy who did the mass murder in his name. And he just lays there going, not like this. It's just a con. It's just a scam. It was never supposed to go like this. Oh God. Which, like, I think ultimately that's how they kind of want to excuse things to themselves. These kind of people.
Yeah.
It's a con. It's a scam. It partially is. They're grifters. They're con artists. They're people who want your money, who want the money of people who are stupid and desperate. I won't dismiss every white person who is racist as stupid, even though it is a stupid thing to believe, because a lot of them are desperate, and a lot of them have been sold a line of bullshit for their entire lives.
I think that also, I also think that most white people that are racist would say they weren't.
Exactly.
That they have plenty of black or Latino friends, and
Exactly. Speaking of getting in the comments, I had an argument online. Almost never happens to me anymore, but it was on Reddit. Someone was saying it was about COVID stuff. And there was a person who said, millions of children died because of COVID. And someone said billions of people didn't, though. And I was like, what is the cost of life that's acceptable to you? And the thing is, he tried some turnabout shit. It doesn't matter. I knew the answer. And the answer to that question is always infinity plus the one that affects me. That is how many people is acceptable to that person, to a person who believes that that's what's acceptable to a person like this. To the I'm not racist.
Yeah.
What's acceptable is infinite degradation until it touches them.
Yeah. Well, and this is what I was saying earlier about local politics, not in my backyard. As long as it doesn't happen here, then it doesn't happen, right?
I'd love for there to be affordable housing anywhere but where I live.
Yeah. Oh, I'd love for a homeless shelter, but I don't want that
anywhere but where I live.
Yeah. 100%.
Exactly. So Gary Danes is left kind of laying on his floor as Spawn goes, it ends. And we get this weird, like, Spawn, like, fangs mouth with, like, Gary's face. Or is that Spawn's face? It's kind of hard to say.
That was going to be my question for you. Is this happening because Spawn's thing too right now is he does things for Al. He does not consider himself Al Simmons. And in a way, I kept taking that as like he does not consider his humanity in the same way. However, what I think on some level, seeing a guy like this, he must reckon with it. Because he specifically doesn't say this is for Al here, right? He doesn't sort of like it almost feels like he's and so I took this panel to maybe be his reclamation of his human identity in some way.
Maybe so. I could see that. I could see the humanity inside him driving what's happening here. Because
the art's unclear, so it's not.
And what we know kind of happened is that there was a riot on the show that was then on TV, and so we assume Spawn is responding to having learned about this.
Yeah.
So it ends 1 year later. Gary Danes is just a lowly janitor mopping a floor in a restaurant, being taunted by black people, which that's a little bit of that kind of like, okay, do we need the like...
Yeah.
Not that it's unjustified, but again, it's a white writer kind of writing black stereotypes here in a way that is meant to use that to humiliate a white person. It's complicated.
I think also it should have ended on the It Ends page.
I agree.
I don't think that we needed a sort of like denouement on what happens to Gary Danes, because the reality is it should be 1 year later. He's just on another fucking show.
Yeah, exactly.
This won't change him.
That's the power of Spawn and the fantasy of this world, is that Spawn can at least scare one racist into being less racist, or into no longer openly acting on his racism in a way that makes it the problem of the world around him.
Yeah. Which, it's the power of fiction, right? I think that we ended up having a more interesting discussion about these two issues than we thought we might.
That's kind of how it goes, because look, that's really a big point of the part of the point of this podcast. And we've said this before. I've said this before, is that we come on here and we have these conversations and we talk through the book because we find value in those conversations, and the conversations help us find value in the comics. We make points to each other in every episode that the other is like, oh, I didn't think of it that way. And that's kind of the beauty of it. It's like you said, great art engenders conversation. It engenders interpretation. It engenders discussion. And I think that that's what we're doing here. Is this great art? I'm not sure. It is certainly art, and it certainly has a vision that is intended to be intended to make a very salient and real point. We have to live in the world where we have to ask. We live in the world where we need to ask as a result of that, is that this person's story to tell? maybe somewhat. Again, I said it at the top, this is not a cancel Brian Bendis for writing
No, of
these
course not.
words thing, because I think it's a fallacy that it's okay to use slurs in defense or in the effort of fighting racism. I think there are some people who maybe a few years ago there was the sort of idea that like you can use them rhetorically, you can say them in these contexts, or they're important when, and I think that there is a fallacy there, which is it's the same thing as ironic racism. Presenting racism is still presenting racism and counting on the person experiencing it to interpret it the right way.
Yeah, I mean, I think that especially when you want to, all right, in terms of this comic, right? Say Gary Danes' slurs are censored, except for the first and last letter.
Right. Does that make it less bad? Does that take away?
Does the book work the same way? Does it have the kind of same gut punch? Does he earn the, not that he doesn't earn it, but like, does his sort of, the resolution of these two issues, does it hit the same way? And I'm not saying that you're supposed to be like cheering for this guy getting punished. What I'm saying is that like, if the point of the piece is to make you reckon with these things, and yes, depending on who you are, these might be words that you come into contact with, unfortunately, all the time to this day, even in 2025. But I think when you are somebody maybe outside that experience, and I'll speak for myself specifically, where like seeing those words is deeply affecting, because for me as a person who I think is reasonable and like not an asshole, that like
it's deeply jarring.
It's jarring and it is affecting. And I think that like if the intent from Bendis, from McFarlane Productions, from Ashley Wood is to communicate those things, then like, yeah, I think it was kind of successful. I understand what you're saying, that it is a fallacy that you have to do those things in order to like,
right. And again, I'm not saying like bad Brian Michael Bendis for writing this. Not at all, because I think this was written with an intent of exposing racism and being anti-racist.
Yeah.
That said, I have two opinions about what you said. One, I actually think it would work. Maybe there are certainly examples where it very likely could without that. At the same time, I think that we weren't going to get that version of the story here because that's not what the intent of Hellspawn is. Hellspawn is the comic where they print that word.
Yeah, that is true. I mean, and that is part of it. I think you're right. And I think like if you got the censored version in a Spawn comic, that actually does go where it needs to go. Like it does communicate to readers.
You can still get the same idea.
What it needs to communicate. Correct. I think in this book that has already kind of established itself 3 issues in as like the not your dad's Spawn book, you know, like
yeah, exactly.
not your little brother's Spawn book is really what it is. Is it does. I don't want to say it needs to go there because I think you're right. I do think it would still work. I think that if you're like, again, a reader who's reading this in good faith and wanting to understand and engage with it in good faith, you'll understand what's happening and you'll read it. However, I do think that by, maybe this sounds stupid, but I do think that by not censoring it, it does kind of, for the people who are like, oh, I'd never use that word. I would never engage with anything that uses that word, to force a reader to then have to read it puts them in a different sort of position. I do think there's a little something like visceral and really affecting about it. And I don't, again, I don't want this to sound like a cosign on like, we should just use slurs in comics all the time because that's what it's good.
In this case of this work, we're talking about a specific work right now. That's important to note for us and for listeners. We're talking about this specific work.
Yeah.
This is not a blanket endorsement of anything ever.
Right.
Or an endorsement of even this necessarily. I think there is maybe, and when I say earlier I said there was some value in some of this. I think maybe even before we were recording.
Sure.
And we kind of like had a little debate over what that might be. Just a couple few words, kind of as we do to prepare for our conversation here. I think the value in taking out any level of ambiguity is that there's no room for misinterpretation about what this is about.
And that's kind of what I was getting at, is that like, well, it could have been.
No,
it's like, no, it is what it is. This is who this person is.
And it's important because he is, as that character is doing, he uses metaphors himself to couch his language and to force other people to say those things for him.
Yeah, he obfuscates everything that he says through this like layer of like, did I say it? Did I maybe not? Did you just read it that way? And so I think it is a little bit important for the comic to be direct, to not have those points obfuscated for the reader. So
honestly, that kind of was our final thoughts, I would say.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that these are two issues of Hellspawn that were a little tough to read, but I think that we found something to like about them. Very cool to see Bill Sienkiewicz.
They make an important and relevant point, and the art looks really good.
Yeah, very cool to see Bill Sienkiewicz on it. I think the art's a little bit stronger in the second issue, which is the one he does the inks on, or helps on the inks on. I do think that there's some... as much as I love Ashley Wood, occasionally we get like a page where I'm just like, my guy,
third face.
What are we doing here? Yeah, like I don't really love the copy paste of the faces over and over again during the talking head scenes, especially when like I get it. I can no prize it as guy doesn't even change his, like he doesn't even wince. Sure, right?
Well, and also Ashley Wood is taking that art from start to finish.
Yeah,
and having a few artistic choices that are kind of shortcuts in there. It's no John Burns like 6 pages of white panels.
Yeah.
Well, which is also an artistic choice,
but yeah, I think overall, I mean, Summer Hellspawn, we're still in it. We're not stopping anytime soon.
And it is hot as hell out there, baby.
Tell me about it.
So we'll be sweating through it.
I do have a little bit of back matter from issue 3. From the so it was called the spawning ground in Spawn, but it's called the post-mortem in Hellspawn. So it says, "Dear Sir, I'm an avid fan of all Spawn titles. I'm writing you with my first ever letter of absolute kudos for your brilliant construction of Hellspawn #1. Your core title Spawn has long since been honed into the most consistently philosophical and mature monthly offering, which is also successful at entertaining a younger audience on a morally acceptable level."
Okay, I'd argue I get where he's coming from with that in terms of mainstream comics.
Meanwhile,
in the 90s.
Your obvious dismay at having to make the Spawn live-action movie adhere to a PG rating for financial reasons was understood and accepted. However, I also shared your dismay. Hellspawn #1 satisfies the necessity for adult-oriented episodes while complementing it with awe-inspiring originality. It is far more haunting and disturbing than the film could have ever been, even R-rated, although I suspect Spawn 2 may give it a run for its money. This book has certainly...
We'll find out someday.
Yeah, this book has certainly been worth the wait. Ashley Wood's art is a strong storytelling device on its own. His pictures are worth a lot more than 1,000 words. After reading the extremely innovative printed story by the third unique genius on this project, Brian Michael Bendis, the reader is compelled to view the pages beyond the initial dark obscurity to decipher and truly discover the intense detail of what they're looking at. It is very...
I'd argue that that's exactly what we discovered in that issue.
True.
During our episode.
It is a very original and visually poetic approach for a mainstream title as opposed to the usual styles. My only concern with the concept is that it doesn't go over the heads of other readers, or that they are simply too narrow-minded to have appreciation. You must understand...
Are other readers as smart as me?
You must understand, I never want to be deprived of this masterpiece. I have only 2 negative issues. The word brought has been spelled brought, B-R-G-H-T. Adults are reading this title, and we are more picky. At least I am. Secondly, speaking of adults, I am 30 years old and would freak if an unknowing retailer sold this to my hypothetical child. Where the hell is the mature reader warning? I'll end this letter now, as I could easily go on with accolades forever. But first, let me leave you with some words of wisdom. Okay. Why does everybody do this? They're always like, Todd McFarlane, here's some words of wisdom. Be careful in life because everywhere you go, there will always be a goon. I mean, asshole. Sorry for the typo. Take care. Sincerely, Paul Dixon, Etobicoke, Ontario.
Okay. I mean, that is true advice. Be careful wherever you go because there'll always be an asshole.
But, like, okay, don't do that. Todd says,
I think he was just trying to be funny.
Yeah, it didn't work. Typical.
Okay, I like it.
Thanks for writing such a glowing report on the new book. It's always nice to hear the kind words. I'll make sure that I pass them on to everybody involved in the project. We do strive to do as good a job as possible. You're right, the Correspond book has long since established its footing. This book was always meant to take it to the next level. Anytime you try to reinvent or rediscover something, those who are comfortable in one spot may not come for the ride. It's a hard trade-off you have to make when you say you're going to create two different versions of the same character. In my perspective, most of that is done with the visuals. That's the first starting impact you'll see in this book. When you compare Greg Capullo's artwork to that of Ashley Wood, there are obvious dramatic difference in the interpretation. Once you combine that with the pacing and unique storytelling in Brian Michael Bendis, then you'll see that the book accomplishes everything we set out to do. The PG-13 rating on the Spawn movie wasn't something that dismayed me. I endorsed it from the beginning. I always believed the movie needed to be PG-13 in order to create an easy audience that would grow with me and take it to a more sophisticated realm as we proceed.
It's kind of what you said of like, if you started reading Spawn at, 10 and you're now 20, 21 or whatever.
Yep.
It's exactly what Todd was talking about.
Yeah.
Well, there you have it.
So, also that Bill Sienkiewicz book I was talking about before, it was Big Numbers. Big Numbers,
Ah, yes.
The book with Alan Moore that never got finished, which would have been about 10 years before this, that any of it was kind of a thing. But anyway. George, before we go, do you have any recommendations for our dear listeners?
I do. Drink water. Drink a bunch of water. I have been like so dehydrated. I've just been pounding seltzers. Like, do whatever it takes, man. Drink fizzy water. If you need to do something like a soda stream or something that just makes you like fizzy water right there, just drink water. Drink water. Just drink water. It's getting hot out there and it's good for your health.
Hell yeah.
Stay hydrated.
Hell yeah. I have one recommendation. I got two recommendations. One,
okay.
Enemy of the Pods book, Speed Racer.
Ah, yes.
We haven't talked about it yet, but David Pepose Speed Racer book. Read it if you like Speed Racer. It's really fun. I've read a bunch of it, or I've read as much as I've been able to read of it, and it's really fun. I think the Free Comic Book Day one has already come out, so
yeah,
that you can definitely track that down. And I'm not.
It was pretty good too.
Yeah, super fun.
I think the artist is great.
Yeah, I should find his name actually.
I think it's I was gonna say I'm pretty sure I know what it is, but I don't want to misspeak.
Speed Racer by this is from Mag Cave Studios, by the way.
Yes.
Davide Tinto.
Yeah, Davide Tinto.
Davide Tinto. So
that is exactly what I thought, but I didn't want to.
Right, and Mark Russell is doing the Racer X book.
Yeah, pretty cool.
I believe, right? So, is that out? Should I?
I don't think so. It's coming out later. It's been announced. Yes.
Oh, okay, good.
That was announced.
That's one of the things, this from being in the industry. Sometimes things get announced to you and they don't get announced to the world.
There's a lot of embargoed knowge in the entertainment industry. Let's put it that way.
But he's doing the Racer X book and David's doing the main Speed Racer book, and that's really, really fun. And I love Speed Racer growing up. The book's really fun and definitely a modern take on something that I didn't think would get modernized. Is it better than the Wachowskis' Speed Racer film? Probably.
I'm sure it is.
Probably not, because that movie rules. The greatest movie of all time.
Really? I've never seen it. Never wanted to see it.
You're crazy.
You'd have to pay me to watch it. I don't know.
I would pay to watch it. Listeners, no, I won't pay to watch it. Listeners, if you want us to do an episode on the Speed Racer movie, if you demand it, we have to do it. So
if you demand it, we have to do it. Look, so many people I know like it, but I'm going to be honest with you. The Wachowskis' track record for me is very spotty.
Two good Matrix movies. Bound is good.
I've only seen one good Matrix movie.
You didn't see the newest one?
No, I didn't see it, so I don't have an opinion on it.
It's good.
The second Cloud Atlas really blew me away when I first saw it because it's just such an audacious movie. Like, It's just it is a very like, I'll say it is an audacious and ambitious film.
Yeah, that's a nice way to put it.
And it like really blew me away, just like the choices they made.
Then
it's
what about Sense8?
Never saw it.
So care. I have a theory that everything is X-Men. Not everything, but like anything with a group.
Sense8 seems to be X-Men.
Sense8 is X-Men, but gayer and more trans somehow. Misfits is X-Men, but British.
Mm-hmm.
Skins is X-Men, but British without powers.
Skins is awesome.
But all these things are X-Men. Anything with a group cast, you could just be like, it's X-Men.
It's X-Men.
Downton Abbey, that's X-Men, but in the 1700s or whatever.
I don't know if I've told this story on the podcast before or not. I have stories that I repeat. I just repeat stories. I'm a repeater. Jupiter Ascending.
I don't think you've ever told this, but it is a bonkers film.
Is the worst movie I've ever seen on a level of magnitude that I can only describe by explaining my experience of watching it, which was I watched the entire thing on a flight from Atlanta to New York.
No, that's bad.
No, it was awesome. Well, I always watch a bullshit movie on a flight because, like, what else am I going to do?
Watch a good movie.
Sometimes. I didn't know if it was going to be good or bad.
Fair.
I watched it and I was so blown away by how awful it was that I got off the plane, went to none other than David Pepo's apartment and immediately forced him to watch it with me. It was so bad that I watched it twice back to back.
Did he love it?
He had the same experience as me of like, what is this fucking movie?
Well, my second recommendation is for anybody in New York, the store Vinyl Fantasy. It's a great,
cool store.
Record store, comic book store in Bushwick. Really, really, really cool. Last time I was in there, just had a great convo with one of the co-owners. She's awesome. We talked about movies.
I think we went there last time I was up in New York, and I bought some cool stuff.
Pretty sure we did. So, Vinyl Fantasy, go check them out. You can find them on the internet and stuff. That's Vinyl Fantasy, not Final Fantasy. Another thing we've talked about on the show. But that's it for this one. Summer Hellspawn continues. We're a quarter of the way through. George, one last thing. For Todd so loved the world,
he gave his only begotten spawn.
See you later, Hellspawn.
Spawnography!
Spawnography is recorded in Athens, Georgia, and Queens, New York. It's produced by me, Pierce Lyden. Our theme music and logo were composed by George Marston. Episodes come out every Monday on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. If you like the show, please rate, review, subscribe. You can find us on social media at Spawnography or at SpawnographyPod. If you'd like to reach out to us directly, you can do so at spawnographypod@gmail.com. Thanks for listening, and until next time, see you later, Hellspawn.